This is financial tips for business owners. Today is all about understanding the basics, and then throughout the year we're going to just add on to this so that you're learning more and more. By the end of the year, well, you feel a whiz at these things. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Lisa and I have a company called 𝗪𝗓𝘃 Wealth. We are financial advisors and we look after about a third of our clients are either self-employed or run their own businesses. So we're well versed in helping you stay on track. So I'm a chartered financial advisor. I'm also a fellow of the PFS, which I think only about 2% of advisors have. So it's a good thing to have. And then I was Financial Advisor of the Year in London for 2022-23, and I'm currently shortlisted as well. So fingers crossed. And then this is Faye. So Faye's been a friend of mine for a long time, but she is also my accountant. And I'll let you introduce yourself in a second, Faye, but I think the reason that why I love Faye and wanted her to come on is that she has this amazing ability to talk to people in numbers in a way that they understand, but also she's a coach, so that she can combine the numbers with the coaching to get the best out of you. And well, she goes above and beyond as a normal accountant. So welcome, Faye. I'll let you tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, so I'm one of the founding partners of Fuse Accountants. I'm actually a tax partner, and my background is tax consultancy. So say I'm a tax specialist or a tax advisor, but most people mishear that as taxi driver, so that's fine, but I do mean tax advisor. I'm also a strategic business coach, so I do a lot of transformational coaching as well, but I do a lot of that around numbers, around coaching businesses with growth, where they want to improve or develop. I'm also a trustee of a children's cancer charity, which is 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗶𝗹 UK. Thank you.
Well done, Faye. And then firstly, the small print, hopefully it's not too small, but the main gist of that is that we, although Faye and I can both give advice in these areas, we are not giving advice today. This is just information only, ideally there to just spark thoughts in your mind. And then if you do need advice, you can get in touch with us separately afterwards. So I'll hand this over to you, Faye, then.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the big question to ask yourself, and you're here today, you've made the effort to turn up, you're running a business, but what right now, perhaps not what your thoughts were when you started the business, but right now, what are you doing this for? Why are you here? Why are you running your business? What are you doing what you're doing for? So once you've got an idea as to what is it you want to achieve, it's going to help you then cement the decisions or the knowledge that you need and the decisions that you need to make later on. So ask the big questions, and it may be you want to move house, you just want more income, you want to look towards having a better retirement plan, you want to just simply enough to pay the bills, you want more clients, you want to expand perhaps the office, you want to take on a bigger team, maybe it's for marketing. You see, the list is endless, but it's what's important for you. Maybe it's simply that, big, hairy, audacious goal, which is the bag. But what's important, just take a moment to just scribble that down on a piece of paper, and hopefully you've got a pad and pen with you today, because we'll ask you a couple of questions throughout. But just jot down in what you think is you're doing this for, what you're working really hard for, because I'm sure if you're working in business, you're not taking it easy. You're working hard. Lisa, what would be the position for you?
Well, mine would be, my first one is to help people. So I think I get a lot of satisfaction and enjoyment out of helping people. So I think when I was growing up, my dad was always really miserable about his job, and he's like, I'm doing it for the money, I hate it. And I always knew that was never going to be something that I wanted to do. And I think I was just really lucky that I fell into financial advice, because it is something where I actually have to force myself to stop working. So I do it because I love it, but also on the flip side, and as a financial advisor, I'm doing it because I see it as a career that I can enjoy, but also create me the lifestyle that I want now, but also when I'm older. And then I think the last reason why I'm doing it is because it hurts my brain because I'm constantly learning new things, and so that keeps me interested. What would you say?
Well, I think you've just highlighted something, that money is usually not the motivator in isolation. Money, having more income, and having, financial goals is of course part of that. But actually, what you're doing it for may be simply so that you can work less, so you can help people, so you can spend some time working in a charity, put your kids through private school. For me, it's changed when I hit my 40s. My priorities change, and they will at every stage of your life. What you're doing it for will always change, and we'll come to some of those ideas later on as we move on. But I think the key thing is just ask yourself, almost metaphorically, just dig yourself that little hole right now. Just dig for that pot of gold. Ask yourself what's important for you. As I said, get it to the top of the page, because you're just going to come back to that, and it might change as we continue talking.
Yeah. Okay. So this is then leads on to know what it is that you want. And I talk to all my clients about this. The very first meeting that we have is sort of plotting out the life that they want, and then we fit the financial plan around it. And you want to split up these goals into short, medium, and long term. And you need to put a lot of colour into these goals, a lot of depth and thinking and thought, and maybe what you decide to put on paper today will change as you think more about it. But from a pure cold numbers point of view, you want to divide them up into short, medium, and long. So your short-term goals are those ones that are going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years, and these are goals that you're really just setting aside cash for, cash-like things. You're not investing it this money. Your medium-term goals are those that sit between the 5-year time frame and possibly the 15 to 20. And then in my view, the longer term goals are 20 years plus. But obviously, if you're about to retire, your longer term is getting more into the medium term as well. But you want to know the amount, what you're going to do about it, how you're going to automate that goal so that it happens without too much effort. It's not something you're going to have to keep thinking about every day or every month. It's just happening for you. So the example for this is the way you would automate that goal and working towards it is setting aside money on a monthly basis. So the day that you pay yourself, the money automatically feeds off into the right pot to start squirreling away that money for that right goal. Do stop me if you want to interrupt me, Faye. But I think the big scary thing is knowing your true number, and your number is whatever it is that you want per annum in retirement. We need to work towards having 25 times that. So if you want £10,000 a year in retirement of income, you're going to need at least £250,000 in your pot, and that is, maybe it's money from selling your business, maybe it's in your pension, maybe it's in your ISAs. Where it definitely isn't, though, is in the equity in your home if you're not going to downsize. So if you want 20,000, it's £500,000. And I think what's quite scary is if you want £40,000 a year, you're going to need £1 million in your pot. And £40,000 a year doesn't sound very much to some people, but £1 million usually does sound quite a lot to most people. So yeah, 25 times, that's the scariest part of the presentation, I promise. But that's the number that we're working towards. So I'll hand over to you, Faye. So we're going to be making confident decisions.
I think ultimately, as I said, you've got the short, the medium, and long-term goals. Everybody's goal and everybody's outcome is going to be different. And for some, it may be building a business up for sale. For some, it may be building their retirement pot. Whatever it is, it's all going to be different. But knowledge is the key thing. So the more you know, the more you're going to be empowered and informed to make really good decisions. We all know that you can't go ahead and make a bad decision or a good decision. You can only make a decision and then figure out later on if it was good or bad. But you can make informed choices as you make your decisions. But without knowledge and without knowing what you don't know, how can you make really good decisions? So I just want to take you through this framework, and you may have seen it before. Because people will often say, oh, I'm no good at maths. Well, in order to know your numbers in your business, you really don't need to be good at maths. There are spreadsheets, there are apps, there are calculators, there are drawings, there are charts, there are visual things, and you can always write numbers in words. If you're going to write the word for, just put FOUR. You can spell it out. You don't always have to use numbers, because a lot of people get stuck when they come to numbers. But not knowing is where you can fall down. So allowing yourself to be in that unconscious incompetent state, so the top left, is you have no idea what you don't know, you don't ask questions, you don't find out what you need to know, and therefore how do you know how you're going to get to your goal if you don't have a level of awareness? So have a think about where you sit as I walk you through this. So if you're unconsciously incompetent, you don't know what you don't know. So how do you find out more? Well, that stepping stone is the sort of the framework of asking good questions. So people always ask, have you got a good accountant? Have you got a good advisor? But you as an individual, if you're interested, taking the interest in your finances, is ask those questions. There is never a stupid question. People always say, I know this is a really stupid question, Faye. There is never a stupid question. And every question will come at different levels from different people. So if you don't know, how being here, for example, that helps you. Everything you can do to increase your awareness. Then we take you through to the conscious incompetence. So you know that you're not very good at it. And a lot of us sit in that space where we're trying a new habit. If I was to go and learn Spanish, I can pretty much tell you I know that I'm rubbish and I'm terrible at languages. So I know that I'm consciously rubbish at it. So conscious incompetence. And a lot of people sit there when they think about money and finances, they know what they think they need to know. And then the fear of the incompetence then drives the fear. And they say, well, oh, I'm no good at maths. I'm a creative. I'm not very good at this. But we're all able to learn. So taking you through to the next stage is, how do you become consciously competent? And simply by applying yourself, by asking the questions, by learning, by being on these discussions, by taking an interest in your finances, in your numbers, and finding the key figures that really are important to you, which we'll come to. What's important for you in your business is, whatever that might be as part of that financial system. When you become consciously competent, you start to learn more. You start building habits and confidence that allows you to make maybe more informed decisions. And then we move into the unconscious competence. It's a bit like when you get in your car, you've driven for 20 years, you get in the car, you put the accelerator, you go for it. And in a way, maybe that's where me and Lisa sit in our own worlds of business. We just do what we do and it becomes very natural to us. So we're constantly trying to take our clients through that journey of taking them into a conscious competence. And there's plenty of exams you can sit if you want to become unconsciously competent. But the point is, just let that sink in as to where you are on that journey and allow yourself to go, okay, I don't know what I don't know, but I'm willing to find out. And how can you get yourself from conscious incompetence to conscious competence? Anyway, a few.
I'm sure you feel the same, Faye, but when clients ask me questions and I can see they're really, really trying to get their head around what we're doing and why we're doing it, I see them progress much faster. I think it's almost like the more you're aware of your goals and the more you understand them, the more likely you are to achieve them as well.
Yeah, 100%. And putting a figure on it is really important. It may be, people often talk about the kind of, I want to hit the £1 million turnover or the £100,000 turnover. Just identifying that, even loosely, is a really good starting point. When you get down to it granularly, there's probably a lot more data and information that you'll want to know. But if you're at the starting point of that journey, just choose your number and put it there on a piece of paper, because even that gives you the confidence. It's written down to go, okay, that's my number. And then you start making decisions towards that. You can start seeing the growth. But yeah, without that sort of basic, clients go, where do I start? We'll start with maybe that number.
And a good tip I once got from a man who trains financial advisors, he told me that long-term goal, we don't actually have the capacity to understand what we can actually achieve. So he encouraged us all to set a goal for our business that felt 20% doable. And so when I was doing it, it's actually really scary, but it set me on a completely different path from the beginning than had I chosen something that just felt in my comfort zone.
Which kind of reminds me of an 80-20 rule as well, and you can apply that both ways. But it's the difference between being unconsciously incompetent and unconsciously competent. It's a whole big scale between, from one end to the other. And just, yeah, exactly what he said as well.
And well done for not saying incontinent, because that's what I keep wanting to say. I'll hand over the taxes to you, Faye.
Yeah, so if you're running a business, just quickly in the chat, it'd be really useful to know who may be a limited company. Of course, I won't get all the answers, but whether you're a limited company or a sole trader. And on a scale of 1 to 10, just say, how comfortable do you feel of understanding your tax knowledge? So, but 1 is, haven't got a clue what tax rate is, what is tax, who is it, what is it? 10 is completely really clear on knowing what tax is. So for corporation tax, we'll come through the rates of tax. When you're a limited company, you will pay corporation tax. When you're an individual, you pay income tax on earnings. But when you're a company with, thank you for starting to comment, when you're a company and you're paying corporation tax, you're also likely paying dividend tax. And dividend tax, albeit it's on you personally, is slightly different from the income tax on earnings, because dividend tax is deemed as investment earnings. Therefore, it's a different tax rate. So there are some really sort of simple numbers. Again, they can look alien. When we'll look at them in a second, they can, they're not, I'm not suggesting that you need to go and swallow the Tolley's handbook of tax legislation, but just these key numbers and just this key information would be really helpful for you to think about as in the business, because however you look at it, those taxes are a cost to you. They are an expense. They should be factored into your business, just like your marketing costs, like your legal bills, like your website. They may not be as exciting, but they're a real cost and they're not going away. And HMRC are probably getting a little bit more aggressive. So the reality is, not everybody pays their tax on time, and I'm not even going to pretend I do. But being well informed, knowing that you've got enough reserves and cash to put aside for your tax payments will help you make really good decisions elsewhere. So just simply how income tax works, for starters. So you get that 0% tax band in the first £12,570 of your income. It's called your personal allowance. Everybody gets that, who, if you're a UK resident, or certain instances if you're non, but I'm not going to speak through about that. But you're a UK resident, you work, you've got a business, you're employed, whatever the situation is, you get your tax-free personal allowance. Then the bit above that, between 12,570, I'm just going to call it 12 and a half, just simple numbers, up to the 50,270. I'm going to call it 50 for simple numbers. That's at 20%. That's about 37,700 at that 20% bracket. This is if you're earning income. So you'll see this on self-employed profits. You'll see this on employed income, but this is separate from dividend tax, remember. Then we go into that income bracket between 50 and 100 grand, and we're being taxed at 40%. And the scary bit here is you'll see it jumps from 40 to 60 and then back down to 45. So our actual rates of tax in the UK are the 0, 20, 40, 45%. But that 60% bracket is an effective rate. And what that means is for every £2 of income over 100 grand of income you have, you lose £1 of that tax-free personal allowance. So you're effectively adding that 20 and that 40 together to get the 60%. It's actually 1.5 times the 40%. So that really stings. And you think, well, what can I do? There's lots of things you can do. And if we've got time for questions at the end, maybe that will be a question. But the obvious one here, for example, is pension contributions, or limiting what you take from a company. Maybe one year you take 100 and the next year you take 300 if you're fortunate enough to be in that financial position. But you may need some planning around that 100k, so you don't just sit every year at 110, for example, and being paid tax at that effective rate. And then, I'm sorry, above the 125 is 45%. Now, how we get to corporation taxes, we've got now variable rates that came in at, not the last budget, but one before, small profit rate. So your first 50 grand of profits in your limited company are 19%. Then between 50,000 and 250,000, there's a marginal rate, and this is 26.5%. And people wonder, well, why is that more between the small profit and the main profit? And when you look at it, it's about effective rates. And then we have the main rate of tax, which is above 250,000 of profit. This is in the business, you'll be paying corporation taxes at 25%. So if you're not even thinking about budgeting personally on your dividends and what you take out of the business, if you are a limited company, this should be factored into your expenses. So whether that's a sort of somewhere in the middle, or 20%, 22.5%, whatever is good for you. I know people that put 25% ahead out because they just want to have enough to make sure they never fall short. of course, there's people that put 10% in, but putting something aside for your tax and knowing that it's a cost for you. And then we move into dividends. So if you are a limited company, taking your company dividends out as well as a small salary, the rates change differently from income tax, and dividend tax rates are different. So we kind of see these odd numbers now. I'm not expecting anyone to remember this, but we get to that same bracket of 0%, the first 12,500. Again, I'm just rounding numbers up and down. We've got 8.75% on that bit up to 50k. Then we've got 33.75% on the bit up to 100k. And then again, look at that second down from top down, 50.6% on dividend income between 100 and 125k. So we're really paying quite high rates of tax on that 100 and 125k. And then we're above that, we go into the 39.35%. So I'm not going to over explain how effective rates work, but as a limited company, you will be paying your corporation tax rates, and then for that for what stays in the company. And then you've got to take your money out of the company and pay either dividend taxes or income taxes if it's a salary. So just be mindful that these rates are then on top of what you might be paying in the company.
Hey, we just got a question that said, is there a possibility in the UK government that 40% income tax bracket gets lower for London residents? 50k annual income doesn't seem high enough.
Do you mean, is there a possibility? I think the question is there a possibility that they may bring it in future and have a sort of sliding for London?
Get worse.
I can't see that. I don't think we've ever historically seen obviously we see it for things like London waiting when we're employed, but on a government legislative level, I've never seen there being variable rates between, London and elsewhere. I think the tax rate is what it is. And that's in my 25 years and the history that comes with that as well. So fundamentally, when you're running a business, what numbers should you be tracking? Oh, Scotland, someone just said about Scotland. You are right, Scotland's got a different rate of tax. And for example, our income tax rate at the lower is 20%, theirs is 21%. So there are some marginal differences there. But it's not thresholds that are different. But I have to say, I don't know enough about Scottish tax specifically. So I'm talking about English tax when I talk through these figures. So what numbers should you be tracking in your business? Now, not every number is relevant for everyone, but you might think about what is relevant for you. So we've got turnover. Turnover is simply how much you sell. So if you're selling widgets, how many widgets are you selling? That will be your turnover. We're not considering VAT right now because if you are VAT registered, you're talking about net of VAT. If you're not VAT registered, it's just simply what you invoice. So just putting any VAT aside. So your turnover, it may simply be what you're billing as services or products. But if you're using products, selling products, perhaps your gross profit is what's more important to you. And that will be after costs like your cost of sales. So it may be the materials, if you sell shoes, the materials you spend to make the shoes, the bows you put on top, delivery and packaging. That would then lead you down to your gross profit. That may be more important to you if you sell products than somebody who's selling services who might be monitoring their turnover. Or it might be commissions paid if you're in TV, for example. You've got these fixed overheads on everything you bill. A gross profit is the difference between the turnover. The gross profit is effectively those fixed cost of sales that have to happen when you incur a sale. Manufacturing, for example. And then your net profit. Your net profit is simply the bottom line after all your overheads. What is your net profit in the business? Maybe that's the most important thing to you. If you've got a load of staff, you've got a load of fixed variable overheads, it's a good idea to understand what your fixed costs are and what your variable costs are. So you've got real clarity as to what your net profit is. But perhaps that's not important. Again, it's choosing what's important for you and your business. And when you're sort of analysing your profit and loss account or your accounts or your numbers, you're not here to be on a certain dragon's place. No one's asking you to know your numbers to a point where you've got to spout this off fluidly and know every margin and percentage. But ultimately knowing in your business, because you know your business well enough to know well, what's that KPI? What's that performance indicator? What is that figure that I need to be monitoring? And how often should I be doing that? And then it may simply be productivity. Perhaps you've got 4 members of staff. What's the output on those 4 members of staff? What's the billing capacity? What's the cost? So it may simply be, how much are you billing in terms of your hours? How much are you billing in terms of your costs? So whatever those proportions may be, think about for you, just again, jot down right now what your instinct is what you think your important top 2 numbers to track are. And there's no right answer. What I didn't mention there was obviously profit margin in the percentage. A lot of people, certainly in service industries, you might be at a 50% profit margin and you want to get to 60% profit margin. So that would be something to track as well. So how might you then, move forward to create a bit of a system, a habit, a money system, so you can track these benchmarks, you can track these things in your business. It may be simply tracking how much tax you've got to pay. How can you create a money system that works for you? It may be, I don't know, Monday morning you go, right, pen and paper, switch on for work, Excel spreadsheet or a notepad, whatever works for you. And work that out. That's part of the consistency of creating a money system as well, and creating habits is just write down those, choose that time and place. It may be in a coffee shop, it may be in the office, where you sit down and go, right, I'm going to look at my turnover of the last week or the last month, or I'm going to look at my pension pot for the last month or for the last week, or I'm going to look at my staff output. Ask yourself those questions. When we do it and how often, weekly, monthly, Tuesday, Friday, what works for you? What do you want to see? What outcome do you want from it? So are you trying to get to a pension pot of £1 million, like Lisa highlighted at the beginning, so you get your 40 grand, because that's quite a scary figure when you think about it. Maybe that's the outcome. Maybe it's, as I said right at the beginning, it's to recruit more staff. How will you monitor it? So you're going to monitor your net profit. You're going to monitor your turnover. Are you going to monitor your percentages? Are you going to monitor profitability in terms of certain costs and parameters? So think about how you're going to judge that. And so this doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be a really complex spreadsheet or anything like that. It can just simply be a set of numbers where you have a few apps open, you go, right, that's that, that's that, that's that. And the more you do that, the more you set that habit, do it weekly, monthly. I think weekly is ideal for those sort of key top line figures. The more they become fluid and the more they become instinctive to know how much you need or what you're targeting or aiming for, it will then help you make really informed decisions when you're about to say, do I recruit someone? Do I take an office? Do I put more in my pension? And then set yourself out a little action plan. Classic coaching tool is just put pen to paper. What am I going to do? 3 things that you're going to do this month, this year, this quarter, this week. It might be increase my pension by 10%. It might be speak to recruiters. Whatever it is, just set that and create that and call that your money system. Lisa, I know you have a money system that you use.
Yeah. Mine's quite strict with myself, and I hadn't realised maybe it was weird until I said it out loud to you. But mine is I have half an hour every Monday morning where I go through all the numbers that are important to me, and I try and scare myself by saying that I want to allocate 25% of money in for the week before to profit and 25% of the money that came in the week before to tax. So I'm over saving for tax, which I know, and that makes me feel really comfortable. And then my profit margin isn't at the 25% where I'd like it to be yet, but I still set aside that money into the profit account so that I can see, I know when I'm borrowing back from it mentally. So it's making me make sure that when I'm spending money that in theory should be profit, I'm spending on things that are going to generate me more profit by doing it. It makes me think about it. And then the reason why I like those 2 numbers as well is because I like seeing the difference between the 2 accounts. So never, ever, ever would I borrow from my tax account, but obviously I am mentally borrowing from my profit account. And so seeing the difference between where my profit should be and where it actually is quite eye-opening. And then I do a bigger meeting once a month, a half day every quarter, and then annually a full day of planning and prepping. And I've just started doing a 15-minute session on a Friday with the team to look at profitability and what's going on sort of cash flow wise for the following week or so, which has really helped us all just be on the same page.
And I think when you're a sole business owner, people lose sight of doing things like that because they think, well, it's just me, I don't need to report to anyone, or what am I doing it for? But even more important, because if you are a business owner on your own, you might well be isolated, and it may not be a conversation you're having with your IFA or your accountant every week, but just having that, setting that time for yourself to have it frequently and getting into those habits of knowing that information will just all, as I said before, it becomes fluid. And the amount of people I've spoke to over the years that have lost their fear of opening the brown envelopes, or you know, terrified of opening the email from their accountant because it says tax at the top. And even some of my clients still have that element of kind of, they get an email from me and they're terrified because I think that means they're going to pay tax. But the more you kind of develop those good habits, like putting some tax money aside, and we're not all superheroes, we don't all put enough tax money aside. But the more you create those habits, the easier they become. And it almost becomes a bit of a game. I have a client that WhatsApps me every week just with a couple of top line figures, and it's just the bank balance. So she knows that she's comfortable, she's got enough to cover overheads for 6 months. We do that at my charity, for example. We just have a couple of figures that we know we have to keep as a reserve, because we are all about granting funds for research. But we have enough money to set aside for maybe 6 months of our overhead. So we just have those key parameters in place. I love that somebody's just commented, my fear is not opening the brown envelopes. Mine too. I mean, I whip them open pretty quick, but in our office we get a lot of brown envelopes come through. So it's my fear is well and truly gone.
So then moving on to, are your efforts aligned with your goals? And I think I see this often with clients who are busting a gut in their business, but when we look at what their personal goals need to be, or just what kind of person, what's important to them, they don't often marry up. They could be working really hard where actually they love the mountains and just want to be spending 1 week a month skiing. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is for them, they just aren't necessarily aligned. So I think this is something really to take a step back and think about, because we, well, get into habits of just doing the same thing. So I think one of my key things is holidays. So I always judge, am I taking enough holidays? And I think for self-employed people, whether you're a limited company or a sole trader, often we don't take enough holidays, we don't take sick days. So I think it's about thinking, I like to think of something I'll bring up with clients is thinking about, like, what do you as an employee of your business need? And you need sick pay, you need a good pension, you need security that you've got ideally a regular income with bonuses along the way. So your regular income can be what you know your company can afford to pay you every month with a top up at the end. But that regularity of income can really help keep you sane as a person as well as the business owner. Definitely, are you taking enough holidays? Something I'm really bad at and I really try is, are you doing your highest value task, so that you everyone's just doing what they're really, really good at, and being the most profitable you can be? Have you got the right team around you, or are you being weak with some of those conversations with the people around you that perhaps aren't the right people for you? And is everyone as well as trained as they could be, and reaching for their potential as well? And then you probably are able to talk about this more, Faye, but for me, the definition between working in or on your business. So obviously working in the business is me being a financial advisor and helping people with their money, the bit that I really love. Working on the business perhaps isn't something that I love so much. So I have to set aside Mondays and Wednesdays to do that, because I know I can't do the thing that I love if I don't work on the business. So for me, it's a 2-3 split. But I don't know what you see, Faye, as a good.
It's a bit of a cliche, that phrase, but it's we do what we do, and it comes back to that conscious competence. We just do what we do, and we gravitate to doing the things that we know that we just do really well. So if our work is to deliver marketing projects for clients, and that's what we do well, we just crack on and do it. What we might not be great at is the finances, so therefore we kind of put it aside. But by having that mentality of, are you working in your business or on your business, is put aside 2 hours a week or whatever it is. Dedicate that time, even if you sit there the first time you do it with a pen and paper going, I've got nothing to write, I can't think, my brain's just frozen, I'll respond to that client. Just that dedication, that time of working on your business, working for what your goals are. And I think, like you've just said about holidays, do you take enough holidays? That is just as important in your business as knowing whether you should outsource, upscale, or grow, because you are fundamentally your business. Even though I would say you're not your business, it's a separate entity, you are fundamentally everything. You're the sticky tape, you're the everything that holds it together, you're the bond. So you need to do what's right for you. And it's, again, another cliche right now, mental health, looking after your own, well-being. Of course, really, really, really important, because you are your business. But just stop for a minute and work on your business and go, what are my KPIs, my key performance indicators? What are my goals? What do I want out of this? And maybe just screenshot those questions and ask yourself that, and then add to that weekly, which then takes us through to asking yourself another quadrant, asking yourself when you're doing things, is it urgent and important, i.e. imminent, your cortisol shooting through the roof, it has to be done, you're going to lose a client, you're up against a deadline, you've got a ridiculous deadline maybe given to you by the client, or your factory's on fire and things are, not getting out the door. Of course, there's urgent, important things that do need to be doing. So I'm not saying you don't do them. It's just, how do you then prevent things from becoming urgent? So how can you make things urgent and important, but not urgent? And that may be putting in place measures, controls, bringing in teams, asking yourself those really big questions in advance, setting out your goals, your kind of what you want for the business financially, looking at your profits, looking at what point you can recruit. And I'll give you just to digress very slightly, an example on this. Most businesses sort of chug, you can see my pen, that's my graph. Most businesses chug along and they go sort of, whether it's like this or whether it's like this, and we have dips, and we think we're going well, and then it goes like this, it goes like this. But we also get to a point of growth where we have to suffer loss for growth. And by loss, it means cash flow loss. We have to pay an office, we've got to put a deposit down, we've got to employ staff, we've got recruiters, so there might be immediate cash flow, but we've got a lot of cash in growth because we're employing other people, we've got more outlay, and in doing so we might find ourselves going like this, and you could end up finding yourself in an urgent, important crisis state because you haven't planned ahead. So we're all going to have that dip, except the dip in cash flow, but it's how quickly you bounce back and getting back on that trajectory of coming back up. So always remember that businesses will peak and trough financially when you commit to things. But it's just putting yourself in the framework where you are in control, you can plan ahead and make those informed decisions. And then we come down to those urgent, not important things, which perhaps, urgent meetings that are put on you, for example, that you feel that you don't need to attend to, or stuff that you feel that needs to be done, but it maybe it's not important, is ask yourself, well, who else could do that? How could you outsource? Where could you use somebody else so you can focus your time and energy running your business and working on your business? And then lastly, the not important and not urgent, not urgent and not important quadrant. I always say this is a bit like putting the washing on when you're supposed to be doing a really big task if you're working from home that day, or turning up in your pajamas, kind of just doing trivia things to keep busy in the business. Fine. I have one of those days on a Friday sometimes. It's absolutely fine to do that. You can't be full on all the time. The point is park some time in that top right quarter and work on what is important but not necessarily urgent, so you can plan ahead and not get into that top left.
Yeah. I think I naturally want to spend the both left No, both, yeah, both lefts, urgent and important, and urgent and not important. I'm definitely a slave to my emails. So the thing that I'm trying to change this year is switch my bottom left to my top right.
And it is about planning. And it's coming back to those money habits and money systems, and anything else. It might be a marketing system as well. It works at every part of your business. Great if you've got a financial director who does all the finances for you, can put in front of you. But if not, you've got to do it yourself. It is hugely important, but it may not necessarily be urgent. So yeah, it should be up there with the important stuff.
Okay, so I think if everyone could spend just a minute writing down the biggest takeaway, maybe the things you're going to do today, this week, this month. How many would you say, Faye? 2 or 3?
3 is a lovely number. I like 3. I have 3 of everything, including the shoes in different colours, but I don't mean that. I mean, I like to think when I'm working in my finances that 3 is a good number. So I have my 3 things.
Give everyone a minute. And then I know a lot of you will have booked this because of Instagram, but how we can help. So Faye and I really do want to help educate people as much as possible about feeling comfortable with their money. So I do my Instagram page, so you can follow there and get regular money tips. And whether you sign up through Miss Lolly or the LCH Wealth, we do a fortnightly newsletter. And I hope those of you who get it do find them useful, but I was really strict with the lady who writes it for me, and her task is to make sure that by reading it, clients are going to come away either being able to save £500 or some ideas that could make them £500. So I really do, it's got a purpose. So it's meant to be financially valuable to you. So do sign up. And then secondly, I do something called a financial diagnosis session. And this is what it looks like. We build your lifetime cash flow for you. Can see a few clients already that are on here. So you've got this already, but those of you who aren't, it's just an hour where we sit down together, and it costs £350, and we'll be able to answer questions for you like, what do you need to save every year to achieve your goal? What are you on track for your retirement if you don't do any more? What investment returns do you need every year to achieve your goal? And we can compare them against what you're getting. And then this one is especially important for business owners. What lump sum do you need to achieve your goals? And for a lot of clients, this lump sum is what they're going to be able to sell their business for, is a good example. Or if it's the annual savings need, this is what income do you need to be able to take as a passive income from your business. And then Faye, do you want to say how you could help if people need coaching or things like that?
Thank you. So as I said earlier, I run an accountancy firm. I'm a tax advisor, but as part of this, I was doing a sort of a package of where I can offer a sort of taster to my coaching sessions, where we do a bit of a crossover between reviewing financial goals, not necessarily tax planning, but just with some thoughts ahead of what the impact is for you. And they're £250 plus VAT a session. One of the things I just wanted to just add in there, what we didn't mention earlier, was there are a few people did say about being a limited company versus being a sole trader, and this may actually come up in a question, but one of the questions you'd put out there initially was whether I should be a sole trader or a limited company. And I just wanted to share, there is no right answer to this anymore, because of the way the tax sort of rules have changed over the years. This is why it's really important to know your numbers and know your finances, because you'll never be able to get that best advice about whether you should be a sole trader or a limited company without knowing that. And usually an accountant, tax advisor would want to kind of that information. But because you see those rates of tax that we shared earlier, it all depends on things like whether you're topping up pension, whether you're benefiting from child benefit, or you're taking advantage of childcare schemes, for example. If you're up to the 100k, that you get, if you've got children, you've got the government's tax-free childcare schemes. So I just wanted to throw that in there, because that will also come into part of so think about those things as part of your own sort of financial planning.
We've got two questions, Faye, that I think are you rather than me.
Yeah.
Without giving advice, are you able to share a rough threshold where it's worth considering going limited? I'm around the 50k mark, reduced using pension contributions, but is there a tipping point that's worth considering?
Yeah, there is, and it's a really good question. About 55k, I'd probably say be a sole trader and put 5k gross into your pension. Simply because what I didn't put in those slides is national insurance rates when you're a sole trader. So you'll be paying 20% income tax, and then you pay national insurance on top. That was 9% last year. It's now 6%. So there's an effective rate of 26% up to 50 grand. When you compare that in a company, you're paying 19% corporation tax plus the 8.75% in dividend tax. You end up, because it's all about effective rates, you can't simply just add the two together. You end up about the same. So what's the point of paying additional accountancy fees, that extra burden of having a limited company, when actually putting 5k in that example, 55, put 5k gross into your pension, you've effectively extended that basic rate, and you haven't got the extra fees and aggro of running a company. So hopefully answer that. The tipping point, maybe, I would say, is between 70 to 100, but depends on, I mean, above 100 probably should be a limited company, depends on your circumstances. But it does depend on things like childcare, child benefit. If you've got, I had somebody yesterday, they've got triplets, and their nursery fees are about 20 grand. But by reducing their salary from under 105 to 99 and keeping it through pension contributions, they get the government scheme, the certain amount of hours plus the top up of the childcare scheme. So they've effectively got a free pension contribution because they would have paid it in nursery fees otherwise. It's an absolute no-brainer when you look at that like that. So in that instance, if you're there's other reasons why you might be a limited company, but hopefully that answers your question.
Someone's just asked to join late, but will it be recorded? Yeah, it's recorded and everyone will get a copy. Antonia has also posted an article that we'll put on the email when we go out. Antonia works at Boss, who are going to be part of this quarterly webinar. I think you're the September one, but she's got an article there that everyone could find helpful, which she'll send round as well. Another question is, are you able to share on how a business can go around without paying VAT? I'm not entirely sure, but I heard someone talking about if I'm providing a service and I'm subcontracting other services, I don't need to pay VAT. Is it right? Does it make sense?
It sounds like the sort of advice that you might get down the pub, from somebody, somebody who knows better than your accountant, or so they speak. Sorry to be tongue-in-cheek there, but VAT is VAT. There is no getting around it. There are, you can't artificially split a business so that you don't hit the VAT threshold. The VAT threshold is £90,000. If your sales are over £90,000, no matter whether you're subcontracting or not, you are simply falling into the VAT registration threshold. There are certain exceptions. So, for example, financial services is outside of the scope. It might depend if you're billing overseas. There might be things that are outside of the scope there. Medical services, residential property. There are certain things that VAT's not applicable. But if you are simply just subcontracting, and it also depends on the difference between whether you're recharging those costs out or whether a genuine disbursement. So, for example, if you are recharging somebody out as a disbursement, or you're paying a fee on behalf, then that might not come into your turnover for VAT. But I would say that's a very, very big, broad VAT question for another time.
And then before we go, if anyone's got any last minute questions, do add them. We're happy to. Lots of people saying thank you and that they've got their 3 things that they're going to do. Lovely. Well, let's leave it there. The recording will come out for everyone to watch back if it was just a lot to think about. But honestly, Faye, thank you so much for your time, and thank you everyone else for coming as well.